Welcome to another episode of Profitable Publishing. This is the podcast for coaches, consultants, speakers, and service providers who want to package their expertise into a profitable book to build their brands. Today, we're going to be talking about profitable publishing. And so, what does that actually mean? What does that look like? And what are the things you want to avoid if your goal is to use your book as a point of leverage for your brand? Now, profitable publishing is not just about selling more books or being able to say, oh, I've had this many page reads on Amazon or other sites. It's about using your book to strategically support your brand, to help your clients, whether they're existing clients or to attract new clients, and of course, to help your bottom line revenue. And in business, if you're writing a book that's tied to your business or your brand, you want your book to work for you. You want it to be something that's not just like a vanity metric of, oh, I wrote a book, I'm an author, just another box to check. You want your book to be able to use something to be something you can leverage to be able to help you to attract those clients, to support them as an extension of you, and also to be an additional stream of income. So this is not something that you are publishing just to say you've published. It's something where you're going to be able to use this as another asset to show your intellectual property and to help build your expertise and attract those who may not already know you, as well as support those who do. Now, let's take a step back. Profitable publishing goes against pretty much everything that you'll hear about traditional publishing, in the sense that if you are in author spaces, or if you've heard or said to someone, hey, I want to become an author, oftentimes you'll hear a couple different things that honestly just don't mesh with you as a business owner if your goal is to use your book in this way. And so one that you will hear often is really this idea that you really need to focus on books sold. And you'll see these bestseller statuses and I won't call any out, I won't name names, but you'll see these bestseller statuses, whether it's on online platforms or other platforms. And when it comes down to it, you really have to take a look and see, okay, are you trying to compare yourself to someone who might have gotten a book deal, who they got their money up front? So they're making their money on the front end, but then on the back end, they're typically not getting a ton in royalties, especially traditionally published authors, these bigger names or even smaller names. They may just be getting a few pennies per individual book copy, or maybe they're getting a few dollars per copy of their book. Whereas if you are focusing on profitable publishing, you are either creating your own advance through pre-orders, like I teach in my pre-order profits framework. It's more so you're getting money on the front end and money on the back end, as opposed to just choosing one or the other. And then another thing that's something that is heard quite often in author spaces is that you have to wait until your second book or your fifth book, or even I've heard your 20th book, which is bananas, before you can see a profit. And I just am not a believer of that for multiple reasons. One, in the sense that each of the books that I've released have made a profit before they were finished and before they released. And so I don't subscribe or ascribe to the idea that you have to wait until you sell an additional book in order to be able to generate that income. This is also something that I teach authors how to do. And so when you have a system in place so that you are able to develop a path for your readers that goes beyond just selling your book, then you can almost predict to some degree, or project, I'll say project. You can kind of project the ways in which you can have your income happen beyond just your book. And so your book shifts from being the most important thing from the book launch perspective to a secondary thing, because you're also focusing on other items that we'll talk about in just a bit. And then also you're throwing out the mantra, the idea that you have to wait years and years and years to make money as an author, or that you will never be profitable. You probably have heard the stat that most authors don't sell more than X number of books, or they don't make more than X number of money in their lifetime. And typically it's the 250 books. In all honesty, you can do that within your first month. You can do that within your first week. I have a client, well, not even a client, I have a customer. She used a copy of my book, Profitable Publishing with Pre-Orders, and she was able to generate $4,000 within her first 4 weeks as an author. And 2 to 3 of those weeks were during the pre-order period. And then she did the rest of the time after her book was out. And that's sales on her website and also on Amazon. And so it doesn't have to look the same way as it does for you as others because you don't have to follow that same path that traditionally published authors follow. Now, you want to also be mindful that profitable publishing doesn't just serve those who are self-published authors. You can be an independently published author. There are traditionally published authors who can also use these strategies because typically, depending upon your book deal, you are still having to do your marketing. It's not something where, unless you are a really, really big name, that the publishing company that you're working with is going to do your marketing for you. And so don't think that just because you are going through either a hybrid press or a self-publishing consultant like myself that you can't implement these strategies. And so when it comes to thinking about the advice that you typically get from the traditionally published space, this doesn't really serve business owners. It is generally focused on books sold versus with profitable publishing, you focus on rate of return, you focus on using your book to build your brand, and also you really focus on aligning your offers with your book or vice versa. So if you don't quite have an offer that is in alignment with your book, then you of course want to develop your offer and then test it out, try it out with clients, make sure you have a system that is something that helps you to develop a framework to get those results. So that way you're then kind of encapsulating that into a book. So that way it creates something that is kind of like a handy dandy thing. You can just like, boom, here you go. Here's my process. Here's my framework. And because of that, you're able to then work more closely with clients if they do sign on with you, or you're able to support people who have never worked with you, like in person or even virtually, but they just read your book and they saw, oh, wow, okay, I can use these strategies. I can implement these steps. I can get that transformation. I can accomplish that goal without actually having to have worked with that person one-on-one. And especially if you're a service provider, you eventually are going to get to a cap where either you're going to max out the amount of time that you have that you can support people, or you're going to max out the time that your team has. And so that means you're either going to have to hire more people or you're going to have to say no to certain clients. And so using a book as a point of leverage helps you to kind of fix that. Not kind of, it helps you to fix that because everybody doesn't need one-on-one services. Everybody doesn't need a group coaching program. Some people just need a book to be able to help them. Some people just need a course to be able to help them. And so it really helps you to leverage your expertise in a way that goes beyond you having to show up physically each and every time. And so an additional aspect of profitable publishing is that it helps you to get out of the rut of being stuck chasing royalties. And so I'm in a lot of author spaces and I'll see posts of, oh, well, I only sold this many books this month, or my royalties are only this. And you don't have to necessarily really be focused on your royalties when you are using the framework that I teach, because you're more so looking at the leverage, you're looking at the speaking opportunities you're getting, you're looking at the connections that you're building, and then you're making deals that are outside of your book. So instead of only focusing on just the amount of money that you might get from a $15, $20, $25 book, you have a system in place that helps people to be able to get their transformation and also helps you to generate revenue to give you some extra cushion. And so it's all about publishing with intention, alignment, and strategy. And so I'll go into what that means. Now, when you are writing your book, when you're marketing your book, but even before you get to that part, when you're writing your book, you want to make sure that you're designing it in a way that attracts the right audience, especially as a service provider, as a coach, as a consultant. Whatever you put out there into the world, you're going to become known for. And so if this is something where you are, for example, let's say you support therapists, or let's say you're a therapist yourself. If you want to build that brand authority, then you would want to make sure that your book aligns with that. You want to make sure that you are including things that are going to be specific to your industry. Because what can happen is if you're publishing a book and maybe you're not using a pen name, you're just using your general name, then people will start to attract and see, you'll start to attract people that are tied to that topic. And so if that's not something you want to be known for, then that's not going to help you to get to your ultimate goal of providing whatever other offer that's tied to your book. Profitable publishing also helps you to qualify readers and help turn them into clients. If someone has taken the time to be able to sit down and read your book, complete whatever additional resources you might have included with your book, they're going to be a much more qualified client than someone who just finds you off the street. And it also helps you to be able to have a stronger starting point where your reader and future client is then able to have a better idea of the way that you work, the way that you sound. It's almost as if they spent time with you without actually spending time with you. And it can also cut down on phone calls that you have to do, for example, sales calls, and it can help you to really qualify clients, potential clients, so that you are not having to explain every single little thing that you do or every single system you operate in. There's times where I talk with people and they'll refer to things in my books and I'm like, oh, you read this chapter, you read this portion. And that is just so helpful, especially in a coaching context, because you're not starting from scratch. And so some of the people I work with, they require that their clients read their book first before they actually move into a different service. And so that's something you can put on your questionnaires, your intake forms is, have you read my books, or which books have you read? And that helps to give you an idea of where they're kind of starting from. Then if you're using your book for your services, offers, or speaking opportunities, you can actually have it be something that is an additional income generator. So for example, adding it onto your speaker's fee, or if you have somebody who's already inside of one of your coaching programs or inside of one of your other containers, you can use your book as a part of the curriculum. And so this is something I do with my pre-order profits curriculum. I have an accelerator for it. So it's an accelerator where we work together to develop your pre-order offer and actually launch your pre-order. So you're creating your items inside the container. And so during that time, it's helpful for me to refer to certain sections in addition to the curriculum that they might find online. I can also say, hey, okay, there's also a list or a checklist or XYZ. There's a chart that really breaks this down on page whatever inside my book. And so having a teaching background, it just is a really cool, it's like a really cool thing actually to be able to say, hey, well, on page 52, we actually can use this and this to help get our work done here. And it feels like a very like meta experience. But it's something where people trust you. People feel like, okay, this person really knows what they're talking about. Like they're able to refer to their own materials and also refer to it in a way to help me as the consumer, the participant. And so profitable publishing is about treating your book like a business building asset. This is not a time to think about passion projects, though those are wonderful. I'm not saying don't ever do those, but if your goal is to use your book to be an additional arm or leg or whatever appendage for your brand, then it has to be very tightly tied to what it is that you already do or what it is that you are moving in the direction of wanting to be known for. And so this is not just publishing just to publish, to say like, okay, I checked off a box. I have done this thing. I'm publishing to be very intentional about what I want this book to do and how I want it to serve my readers. And one thing that I thought was very interesting when I read it, and I can't remember where I read it, but the fact that people all the way from people who are in prison, and not to say that there's like a hierarchy here, I'm not saying that, but people who are in prison to CEOs of companies, they all read books and everybody in between. And so a book is a very powerful tool that you can leverage to be able to reach people who are beyond yourself. And so, for example, within my food brand, I have a devotional and a cookbook, and it's a faith-based cookbook. And so it's on the Daniel fast. And so with it, there are people who message me from all over the world in places I have never been before, and I may never ever get to, that are like, oh my gosh, I read your book. This is so helpful to me. And they want to see what other things that they can do to get support. And so your book is something that essentially can go beyond you, and it's something that can support your readers and turn them into future clients, or even just help them to be able to have that transformation. And so let's now move into what makes a book profitable, because every book that's written is not going to make a profit. So here are some key markers that I use to help my clients with profitable publishing. And so, like we've mentioned earlier, so a book that's aligned with your brand identity. When people read your book, they also want to find out more about you. They want to learn how you operate. They want to see what kind of things you have to offer. And so I kind of think about it like when I watch a movie or a TV show and I like see an actor and I'm like, okay, I like this person in this movie. What other things do they have, or what other things are they in? Same thing with other product suites. If you have like hair care products and you're like, okay, well, I like the shampoo, I like the conditioner, maybe I also like the hairstyling or whatever, like pomade or gel or something from them. People are going to use that to be able to find additional ways to network with you, to connect with you. And so you have to be mindful that it's really building your brand identity. So you want it to be aligned to that brand identity. And then another aspect of a profitable book is that it's written with a clear reader and a clear transformation. So there should be a very clear and very easy to understand. And not when I say easy, I don't mean like it has to be super simple, but it should be something that's like, okay, you got me from point A to point B. And there's a path, there's a set of steps, there's some type of process that they're able to understand as a result of reading your book. And then it should also be something that includes different profit points to tie people back to you while you're reading. It shouldn't be that they are going through the entire book and never having to engage with it in some kind of way or never having to sign up for something or, and when I say have, I mean, given the opportunity, let's say that. There shouldn't be times where within your book that there's never an opportunity for somebody to come back to you, come back to your brand, come back to your website, connect with you on social. They should be doing something. So when I think about my time in the classroom, whenever students would be reading something, they're doing something with the text. So they're annotating the text, they're writing things in the margin, and your reader might not be doing all of that, but they at least should be doing something to connect with you. So maybe you're providing something supplemental to them. Maybe they are downloading a free cheat sheet. There should be something that they're doing in addition to just reading the book so that they're not just reading passively, but they're actually actively doing something. And there's a few reasons behind that. Some of it has to do with neuroscience, so like the science behind how your brain works. And when people engage with the text, they're more likely to remember the information. So then next, you also want to make sure that your book is connected to offers outside of your book. On average, depending upon your book's pricing and things of that sort, you likely will be making anywhere from a couple dollars to upwards of maybe $20, $30 if it's a fancier book. So like for a cookbook or things like that. And so you also have to account for things such as packaging, shipping, that kind of stuff, those kind of things if you're shipping it yourself. Or if you are working with a distributor like Amazon or Spark, then you also have to think about their cut. And so you don't want to have your income only be reliant on whatever that one thing is, whatever the royalty is. You want to have things outside of that. And so that's why it's so important to lead your reader on into other things. A profitable book also carries a clear audience alignment. So that means that there is one audience that you're speaking to, one set of people, one individual person, if you can get down to that in the nitty gritty. And it could be that they are in a certain phase in their life. It could be that they are in a certain transition, but you're helping them to have some type of transformation or to get some type of result. Now, that result depends on what it is that you have, what else it is that you have tied to your book and your brand. And it could be something of where you're showing them an entire process, or maybe you're showing them a glimpse of a process within your process, and then you're inviting them to work with you in a closer manner to get the entire scope of the process. Now, which one of those you do depends on a lot of factors, so there's not just a blanket option for them. And then lastly, a profitable book helps you to take steps, to have clear actions, to be able to implement something, and then also to connect with you further, like we mentioned. And with that, that means that you are being very clear and very intentional about the path that you want your authors, your path that you want your readers to go on. And eventually the goal typically is to have them lead into being an online lead for you, or to lead into being a customer or a client. Now, as a business owner, meaning you're someone who sells services, you provide a program, or you sell your expertise, these are all going to be things that help build your brand and bolster it so that you become recognizable as the expert in that thing. And for example, I keep referring to this, but with my Pre-Order Profits program, because of the book launch from that program, I included a group coaching program with it. Of course, launched the book, and then also have VIP day services with it. I have people who say, "Oh yeah, you're the pre-order lady." Like they know me for doing that. And so when you are strategic in the ways in which you invite people to work with you and or in the ways in which you are launching your book, because we don't just release, we launch around here, which I'll talk about in another episode. You have to make it so that people have a bit of an imprint, like you're making an imprint on them, so that way they remember you for something besides just, oh yeah, you do XYZ, but what specifically do you do about it? And this works for people who are not even just your actual ideal audience or ideal customer, but it also works because with people who are outside of that. And what I mean by that is when you are launching your book, not releasing it, when you are doing the things you need to be doing with your content and things of that sort, then even people who have no interest in releasing a book or doing anything within publishing, they still refer people to me because they think, oh yeah, Ashley does publishing. She works with these type of authors. This person has a book. Let me go tell them about her. Or they'll message me and say, hey, my cousin just wrote a book. They need help with XYZ. Can you help them? And I say, sure, let me have a conversation with them, see if we're a good fit. And so it creates lead generation for you without you having to do things like ad spend or things such as randomly DMing people to get to see if they're a good fit. And now I'm not saying that you shouldn't spend money on ads. It's a whole separate conversation. Or that you can't DM people. I don't suggest DMing people randomly, but you of course can DM people. But I'm just saying this is another way to attract clients. And also it helps you to stand out because people start to remember that, oh, you do this thing. Now, lastly, just to kind of wrap things up, profitable publishing focuses on a few things. So it focuses on client attraction, like I just mentioned. It focuses on helping you to leverage your brand for different opportunities, such as speaking, courses, consulting, things of that sort. And then it also helps you to stand out in an industry. And your book becomes a tool that works as an attraction instead of chasing. I like to tell people that I help you to attract instead of chase your readers, because when you are the beacon, then people come to you. And so think about, I don't know the verse in the Bible, but there's a verse that talks about being a city set on the hill, and that like you are the light and you shine your light so that others are attracted to you. And your book works the same way. Once you start shining your light about the thing that you're passionate about the thing that ties to your brand, then it begins to be something where people are like, oh yeah, this person's talking about this thing. Let me go over there and see what they're talking about, whether or not I'm even thinking that that's something I want to do. But I see that they are consistent in this thing. They wrote a book about it. That builds credibility. And then it also turns into something that's a conversation starter or even a business card, in the sense of, not that you're going to pass it out like a business card. You probably are not going to give it away as freely as a business card. However, it builds your credibility and it helps people to know, like, okay, this person is legit. Hopefully you're writing it in an honorable way. Hopefully if you're here, you are not a scammer. But they see, okay, this person is legit. There's somebody who I can trust on this topic. And now I'm thinking, when I have questions about this, I'm going to make sure that I ask them about this topic. And or I'm going to direct people who have questions about that to this person, because I see that they are consistent in this thing. They took the time and energy to write a book about this thing, and it matches and aligns with the other things that I have seen them do. And so it just is like you're layering your credibility, you're layering your visibility, and then that turns into your lead generation. So people are coming to you instead of you always having to go to them. So I hope that this episode has been helpful for you. And so I want to give you a few resources to support you. So first, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast and share this with another coach, consultant, business owner who is either thinking about writing a book, but just haven't made the time to do it just yet, or that already has a book that's not working as hard for them as they could be. And then also, I want to invite you to grab your copy of Profitable Publishing, the Marketing Playbook, because if you have a book that's already out or you have a book that's kind of in the wings, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to use it to find over 100 ways to get your book in front of the right audience, to be able to attract them and help you build your brand. And so I'll put those links in the show notes for you. And until next time, thank you for listening and stay profitable.